This is legally a motorcycle. Hi guys, my name is Safi Sprocket and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the rise in moped bicycles. Now, if you've been following me on the channel, you'll know that recently I got the joys of getting to play with one of these in Ireland when I was looking for my GoPro camera, and since I've returned home, I have been absolutely obsessed with them, so much so that I ended up getting one for myself. But one of the biggest questions I've recently been facing is, obviously I do have experience riding electric motorcycles and also now the moped bicycle. And I guess I kind of left with this question, like, is the lines between biking and, well, biking becoming a little bit too blurred? So I ended up getting the Fiido M1 specifically for a variety of reasons. One being the fact that it is one of the most budget-friendly bikes on the market. It also has some really amazing chunky tread tires, but the most noticeable feature, and obviously this is the feature that I'm particularly interested in, is the fact that it does come with a moped mode. So as a biker, I'm going to be completely honest, I have zero interest in a pedal assisted bike. I don't want to cycle, it's not my cup of tea. But what I am interested in is this bike's specific moped mode. What I want to know is, does it throttle on? Does it throttle on well without any sweat? So let's go check it out. When I did go ahead and purchase the Fiido M1, I did start very quickly referring to it as a moped bicycle, and obviously that's not its specific name. It is technically a pedal assisted bike. However, there is a massive difference between pedal assisted bikes and this thing. Obviously when you have your pedal assisted bike, you're pedaling along, and at some point there is an electric motor that kicks in and it adds additional power and additional torque as to when you're cycling along. But with this thing, it has the ability to be 100% throttle only. It's a little bit of a Frankenstein machine that's somewhere between a motorcycle and a bicycle, and for that reason I just started referring to it as a moped bike. Now I'm going to be honest, there is a little bit of a legality issue with this bike, but we'll get onto that later. So let's take a quick look around. I can say for certainty I've never purchased a motorcycle that folds in half. But obviously this thing does, and it's a fantastic feature enabling you to kind of fit it in the back of a boot. This fits perfectly fine in my Mini. It's not just the bike that folds down either. You can also disconnect the handlebars so they fold down, and you can also remove the front wheel. It does have a quick release as well. So overall, it doesn't fold down to the smallest bike out there, but this thing fits in my Mini and it fits in quite well. Yeah, it compacts down. Never had a motorcycle that's done that before. So something new every day. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this thing is not particularly light. It does weigh 25 kilos, which I suppose in comparison to a motorbike is quite light. However, in comparison to a lot of the bicycles on the market, it is actually quite heavy. The bike also has these chunky tread tires, which again is absolutely amazing for off-road. However, when the battery goes down and you're out of charge, these are the worst thing in the world. They're just so incredibly heavy. Now, in the company's marketing, they stipulate that this bike will operate for someone up to 120 kilograms in weight, and it will also work up to a 30% incline. Whether those are both things at the same time, I don't really know. Fiido claim a range of 100 kilometers for this bike, but I'm going to be honest with you guys, I do think that that is an unrealistic claim. You're more likely to get between 45 to 60 kilometers on pedal assist mode, and you're probably going to get a lot less on moped mode. You're probably going to get about 25 kilometers, and realistically less if you're on the heavier side. The things to bear in mind as well that are going to affect the range of this bike is just, simple things like, are you going uphill? How heavy are you? What's the weather like? What kind of roads are you riding on? You're obviously going to get a lot more range on, your regular roadside compared to like off-roading. All these different factors are ultimately going to affect how much range you're going to get out of this bike. It is what it is. However, off-roading, I got about 25 kilometers just specifically on moped mode. I'm going to presume I could probably double that if I was doing pedal assist, but again, I have zero interest in pedal assist mode. I am only interested in this bike from a motorcyclist's perspective. So the charge time for this bike is between 7 to 9 hours, which means it's most likely going to be an overnight job. Something that did cross my mind was the potential to charge these from a public EV charger. Now, that just, I was just kind of thinking if you were going to use this for some light touring, which I think potentially be quite fun. You know, would you be able to stop at like a petrol station and wait a couple of hours and do a little bit of a top up? And the answer is yes and no. Ultimately, people have done this where they have modified the bikes. However, they had needed to purchase an additional adapter to do so. And also you need to check with the manufacturer whether it would be safe to specifically plug this bike into an EV charger due to the output of the volts. So it's also something you do have to bear in mind. I don't think that this specific model could be charged from an EV charger in public, but I have heard of people doing it. I personally wouldn't do it. I don't really want to mess around with electricity. I think you'd be better off, if you were ever going to tour on something like this, is just park up, chain the bike up, take the battery out, go into a coffee shop, put it on charge, come back out, stick it in the bike again, and off you go, rather than trying to mess around with EV chargers. So let's talk about the performance of the M1. Now, despite the chunky tires on this bad boy, it does sprint fairly well. However, it doesn't perform well when it comes to like those low speed, technical kind of turns on trails. When it comes to going up a hill, now, if you get a little bit of speed behind you when you hit a hill, it does kind of just fly up there really quickly. But if you do kind of rely on that torque delivery when you're at the bottom of the hill or even mid-start on the hill, it doesn't kind of roll as well, which you kind of expect for any kind of vehicle, let's be honest. When it comes to going downhill, this thing flew. It was actually a little bit scary, I'll be honest. I didn't expect it to go as quickly as it did.
I got 35 on the way down and then 20 on the way up.
Now, obviously, those kind of power deliveries are going to vary massively depending on how heavy you are. If you are on the lighter side, you are going to get a lot more speed out of it. If you are on the heavier side, you're going to get a little bit less. So on to the question that everyone is probably wondering. How fast does this thing go? Now, under current EU guidelines, this bicycle must be restricted to 25 kilometers per hour. Now, we do have 7 gears and also a quick shift button. In addition to this, we also have a throttle that's located on the right-hand side, which is technically illegal in the EU and subsequently the UK. Now, when it comes to the throttle located on the right-hand side of the bike, it comes with a bunch of warning stickers and documentation and basically all that kind of malarkey that comes with a purchase like this that specifically states you shouldn't operate the throttle above 90 Newton meters. But it also doesn't give you a way to measure that, so it's a little bit pointless. Just like a motorcycle, a key is required to start the ignition on this bike. It will not power up or produce any speed from the battery without that key being set in a certain position, which is incredibly annoying because today I drove all the way to the forest and forgot it. So I'm going to come back and film that part. So Fiido doesn't really give too much information about the system setup of this bike, but one noticeable drawback about this machine is the fact that it uses a cadence sensor and not a torque sensor. So when you do go to throttle on, this thing is incredibly jerky. And I'm going to be honest, it took me a long time to get used to the throttle response, and it's still something that I'm struggling with today. Let's take a look. So the stopping power of this bike is courtesy of mechanical brakes. We have mechanical brake discs at the front and also at the rear. Now, located on the front of the bike is a built-in light, again powered by the battery, and located within the light is a horn, the button for which is located on the handlebars. Now, this is a very common feature of most Chinese imported bikes. Now, we don't have any lights on the rear of the bike, we just have a singular reflector. So the front forks are unbranded. We have 55 millimeters of travel. We also have an adjustable rebound and lockout feature. and the rear shock is by Keigen and has 35mm of travel. Unlike a lot of the ugly displays that come on most of our modern electric bikes, the M1 has a very beautiful LED screen. Now this gives you information like your speed, what mode you're in, it even gives you an ohmmeter and also how much battery life is left. So the M1 retails new at £900, and I think for people who specifically looking for electric bikes for doing jobs like food delivery, it's a really great deal. It's a lot more efficient to buy an M1 than it would be to buy a really old ratty 125cc for delivering pizzas. So I could see in that aspect it would be a very attractive purchase. You can't really get a lot of motor for £900 unless you're going for something really worn or beaten up, but you can get a really nice electric moped. So I said at the start of this video, I was very keen to look at electric moped bicycles from a biker's perspective. And one of the questions that obviously will come up is, are these more efficient for commuting than a motorcycle? And ultimately, I think it comes down to your individual needs as a biker. Now, obviously, when it comes to something like this, you can fold it and stow it away, and it's a lot easier and more manageable in terms of size, especially if you were working in an office than a motorcycle would be. It'd be possible to take it in and charge it up. But then you look at the cost-benefit analysis. So obviously you spend £900 and you get something like this. Now the range on this is probably going to be about, let's say 20 miles a day. So if you're living in a commute zone which is less than 20 miles a day either side, I think you're good to go as long as you have the ability to charge it up. But the thing that I would be most concerned of is that obviously you're spending about £1,000 on this particular type of vehicle. The electric bike market at this current point in time is so new that ultimately we don't really know the shelf life of these vehicles. With a motorcycle, you know roughly how many miles you can get out of it before it starts to fall apart. With the electric bikes, there's no real way to kind of work out how many miles they've done and how many more miles they'll last. And ultimately the market is just, again, it's just so new, there's no way to know this. We don't know what the shelf life is. So whether that £900 is good value for money is one of those kinds of questions that we'll only really know in like 5 years' time. So question number 2, again, from a biker's perspective, can this bike compete with a motorcycle, even electric motorcycles? And ultimately, I don't think it can. I think whilst it's kind of a hybrid between a bicycle and a motorcycle, I think it's in a category of its own. It's a lot of fun and it's very cheap to run and it's great for taking off-roading, but I don't think it gives you the same kind of experience from a bike that you would get from a motorcycle. And it's a completely different experience in itself. So on that basis, no, I don't think it can compete with bikes. It's in a league of its own, and that league is below a bike, I'm gonna be honest. Question number 3, is it cheaper than a motorcycle? And the answer is, well, yes. It's £900 to buy. You don't need a license, you don't need tax, you don't need insurance. It's just an electric bike that you can top up at the end of the day. There's no other fuel costs other than, stealing a bit of cheeky electricity from your employer. So on that basis, it's a lot cheaper to buy and also to run in terms of a vehicle. However, one of the biggest issues is the range on it is significantly smaller than a motorcycle, and if you do need to do long distances or you do need to get somewhere fast, no, it might be cheaper, but if it's not fit for purpose, you're just wasting money. So in that aspect, it's not cheaper. There we have it, that is the moped bicycle. Now I have had a great deal of fun riding this thing around the forest. It is incredibly fun, but I don't quite feel like it fits in either a motorcycle or a bicycle category. It's somewhere in between, and I kind of enjoy it in its own right. I don't think I'd ever replace my regular motorcycle with something like this, and I don't think I'd ever really particularly tour on it either, even if it was the case that the whole moped setup was made completely legal. The only people that I feel like would make the purchase of this particular bike over like your regular motorbike is just your food delivery people who are specifically purchasing 125s just to deliver food. I think in terms of the biking industry, I think the industry knows very specifically what bikers like and what they don't like. And while this is a great deal of fun, I don't feel like the manufacturers are going to start trying to sell us bikes like this anytime soon. So I'd be really interested in learning about what you guys think about this new style of moped bicycle. So please do drop a comment below. And if you are particularly interested in me doing a side-by-side comparison with my moped bicycle and also an upcoming electric bike loan that I'm going to be doing, drop a comment below, because I'm still kind of debating about whether it's worth doing it, but I do feel like a side-by-side comparison would be a lot of fun. Now, if you guys do want to see more great bike content, don't forget to hit subscribe. I do produce new videos every single Sunday at 6 p.m. So until next week, my name's Safi Sprocket, signing off.